He was sitting right next to me one moment. I looked down at the Bible verse he asked me to read, and when I looked up again, he was gone. Completely vanished. No footsteps, no sound. Just gone. What would you do if a stranger appeared in your darkest moment, asked you to read just one verse from the Bible, and then vanished without a trace? Would you think you were hallucinating? Or would you recognize it as something much more profound, perhaps even divine? The story I'm about to share with you has never been told publicly before. It's the kind of encounter that skeptics dismiss and believers treasure. But whether you're a devoted Christian or someone still searching for answers, I invite you to open your heart and mind to the possibility that God works in ways beyond our understanding. This is the true story of Rebecca Collins, a 28-year-old woman from Seattle whose life was spiraling into darkness until a mysterious encounter changed everything. It was pouring rain on that cold November evening. Rebecca sat alone at the bus stop, drenched and defeated. She just lost her job that morning, the third one this year. Her rent was due in 3 days, and she had exactly $43.27 in her bank account. Her boyfriend of 5 years had left her for someone else just weeks before. And to make matters worse, she'd just gotten off the phone with her doctor, who wanted to discuss some concerning test results in person. Rebecca wasn't just having a bad day. She was having a bad year, maybe even a bad life. I remember sitting there thinking about how easy it would be to just end it all, Rebecca later confessed. I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't see any way forward. Every door seemed to be slamming shut in my face. Rebecca hadn't grown up religious. Her parents had taken her to church on Christmas and Easter, but faith wasn't something that had ever taken root in her life. In that moment of despair, however, she found herself doing something she hadn't done since she was a child. She prayed. It wasn't an eloquent prayer. Just 4 simple words: God, help me please. The bus was running late that night, a detail that would later seem like divine orchestration rather than mere coincidence. As Rebecca sat there, tears mixing with raindrops on her face, she didn't notice the elderly man approach until he was standing right in front of her. "Excuse me, miss," he said in a gentle voice that somehow cut through the noise of the rain. "Would you mind if I sat here?" Rebecca looked up. The man appeared to be in his late 70s or early 80s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was wearing an old-fashioned tweed coat and carrying a worn leather satchel. Despite the downpour, he didn't seem to be wet at all, a detail that Rebecca wouldn't realize until much later. "Of course," she replied, moving her bag to make room. The old man sat down with a grateful nod. For a few moments, they sat in silence watching the rain. Rebecca tried to discreetly wipe her tears away, but the man noticed. "Difficult day?" he asked, his voice filled with such genuine compassion that Rebecca found herself nodding before she could think better of it. "You could say that," she replied. The old man nodded thoughtfully. "You know, in my many years on this earth, I've found that sometimes our darkest moments are just the beginning of something beautiful." Rebecca might have normally brushed off such a comment from a stranger, but something about this man made her listen. There was a wisdom in his eyes, a peace that seemed almost out of place in this chaotic world. "I don't see how anything beautiful could come from this," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. The old man smiled gently. "May I show you something that has helped me through my own dark times?" When Rebecca nodded, he reached into his satchel and pulled out an old, well-worn Bible. The leather cover was cracked with age, the pages yellowed and soft from years of turning. "Would you mind reading something for me?" he asked. "My eyes aren't what they used to be, especially in this light." Rebecca hesitated. She wasn't religious, and part of her wanted to politely decline. But something, curiosity, desperation, or perhaps something more divine, made her nod and take the Bible from his weathered hands. The old man directed her to Psalm 34 verse 18. With a voice still shaky from crying, Rebecca read aloud, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." As the words left her lips, something extraordinary happened. Rebecca would later describe it as a warmth that began in her chest and spread throughout her entire body, like someone had wrapped a warm blanket around her soul. The heaviness that had been pressing on her for months, the anxiety, the fear, the overwhelming sadness, began to lift. When she looked up to thank the old man, her eyes wide with this unexpected feeling of peace, he was gone. Rebecca blinked in confusion. She looked around the bus shelter, then up and down the street. But the old man had vanished. The bus hadn't arrived yet. There were no other buildings nearby where he could have taken shelter. It had been mere seconds since she'd taken her eyes off him to read the verse. The old man had simply disappeared, but he'd left his Bible behind. And when Rebecca opened it again, she noticed something she hadn't before. On the inside cover was an inscription. "To my dearest friend Thomas, may this bring you the same comfort it has brought me through the years. William, 1943." Rebecca took the Bible home that night, still stunned by the encounter. She found herself returning to that verse again and again, finding a strange comfort in the words. For the first time in her adult life, she began to wonder if there might be something to this faith her parents had only casually observed. Music transitions to hopeful. In the days that followed, Rebecca experienced what she could only describe as a series of impossible coincidences. The very next morning, she received a call from a company she'd interviewed with months ago. A position had unexpectedly opened up and they wanted to offer it to her with a salary 30% higher than her previous job. 3 days later, her doctor called to say there had been a mix-up with her test results. The concerning findings belonged to another patient. Rebecca was, in fact, perfectly healthy. And the following Sunday, when she decided on impulse to visit a local church, she met a kind older woman named Martha who was looking for a tenant for her garden apartment at exactly half what Rebecca had been paying for rent. It was like everything that had been going wrong suddenly started going right, Rebecca recalls. But more than the external circumstances, it was what was happening inside me that was truly miraculous. For the first time in my life, I felt peace. Real peace. Music softens. Rebecca began reading the Bible regularly, starting with the Psalms and eventually moving through the New Testament. She joined a small group at the church and made new friends who supported her on her faith journey. But she never forgot the old man who had disappeared. She asked around the neighborhood, showed his Bible to the church pastor, even checked local retirement communities to see if anyone knew a man matching his description. No one did. 6 months after her encounter, Rebecca was helping Martha, her landlady, clean out some old photo albums. As they flipped through black and white photos from the 1940s, Rebecca froze. "That's him," she whispered, pointing to a young man in an army uniform. "The man from the bus stop." Martha adjusted her glasses. "That's my father, William. He passed away 15 years ago." Rebecca's hands began to shake as she pulled out the Bible from her bag, the one she now carried everywhere. She opened it to the inscription, "To my dearest friend Thomas, may this bring you the same comfort it has brought me through the years. William, 1943." Martha's eyes widened as she took the Bible with trembling hands. "This was my father's Bible," she whispered. "He gave it to his best friend before they were deployed to Europe during World War II. Thomas never returned from the war. My father treasured this Bible after it was sent back with Thomas's belongings. When my father died, we couldn't find it anywhere. We always assumed it was buried with him. Was it possible? Could the elderly man who had disappeared from the bus stop have been William, Martha's father, who had died 15 years ago? Or perhaps even Thomas, returning the Bible to William's family through a divine appointment with Rebecca? Skeptics might call this a coincidence or suggest that Rebecca's memory of the man's face was influenced by seeing the photograph. Some might even question if the encounter happened at all. But Rebecca knows what she experienced. And for her, the explanation is simple: angels don't always have wings and halos. Sometimes they look like ordinary people who appear at exactly the right moment, share exactly the right words, and then disappear, leaving us forever changed. Rebecca's story isn't unique. Throughout history, countless people have reported encounters with mysterious strangers who appear in their darkest moments, share a message of hope or warning, and then vanish without explanation. The Bible itself speaks of entertaining angels unaware in Hebrews 13 verse 2. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." 2 years have passed since Rebecca's encounter at the bus stop. Today, she's flourishing in her career, active in her church community, and recently became engaged to a kind man she met through her small group. The Bible from the mysterious stranger sits on her bedside table, a daily reminder of how her life changed in an instant. "I was at my lowest point," Rebecca reflects. "I had no hope, no faith, no direction. And then a stranger, an angel, a messenger, whatever you want to call him, appeared and disappeared in minutes, but left behind exactly what I needed." But Rebecca's story doesn't end with her own transformation. 6 months ago, she was waiting at the same bus stop where she'd met the mysterious old man. A young woman sat down beside her, visibly distraught and wiping away tears. Rebecca felt a familiar nudge in her spirit. She reached into her bag and pulled out the old Bible. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Would you mind reading something for me? My eyes aren't what they used to be." The young woman looked surprised but took the Bible. Rebecca directed her to Psalm 34 verse 18, the same verse that had changed her life. As the woman read the words aloud, Rebecca watched her expression change from confusion to wonder. And when they parted ways that day, Rebecca left her with the Bible, passing along the gift that had been given to her. "I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what happened that rainy night," Rebecca says. "But I do know this, sometimes one verse is all it takes to change everything." And sometimes God sends exactly the right messenger at exactly the right moment, even if they can only stay for a moment. Rebecca's experience forces us to consider, how many divine appointments have we missed because we weren't paying attention? How many angels have we entertained unaware? How many messages have gone unheard because we were too distracted, too skeptical, or too wrapped up in our own problems? The story of the old man who disappeared might seem incredible. But for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, it's a powerful reminder that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest moments. As the ancient prophet Isaiah wrote, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." If you're watching this now and feeling lost, defeated, or alone, perhaps it's not by coincidence. Perhaps the story found you at exactly the right moment. Perhaps these words are the message you needed to hear today. What verse might change your life? What divine appointment awaits you? What messenger might God send your way? Or might you be that messenger for someone else? Remember, the Lord is indeed close to the brokenhearted. And sometimes, He sends a messenger to remind us when we need it most. Even if that messenger can only stay for a moment before disappearing back into the mystery from which they came. If you've experienced something similar, an unexplainable encounter that changed your life, share your story in the comments below. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this message has touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need this reminder of God's unfailing presence in our lives. Until next time, may you walk in the certainty that you are seen, you are known, and you are deeply loved by the Creator of the universe.